welcome to this presentation. I will be talking about the benefits and hidden secrets of Azure API Management. First of all, what are APIs? If we go to Wikipedia for a definition of an API, we get to the point where they say it's a connection between computers, computer programs, it's a type of software interface offering services to other pieces of software. It's a very long narrative statement. If I just look at what is important in this definition, I come to my own definition. An application programming interface is software interface providing a connection between computers or computer systems. APIs are for machines. They expose access to data and functionality. They are understandable by machines and are internally and externally used. Sometimes they also are being used by human beings, but we often refer to them as being developers. What are some examples of APIs? You have internal ordering systems, you have government services, you have monitoring and alerting systems. If there is a software behind it, you probably can make an API out of it. What are some examples of internal APIs? Well, let's have a look at an HR system. You have the ability to retrieve a list of employees or get the details of a single employee. You can create new employees and you can update an existing employee. On the right hand side you will see the response that you will get from an API service, and in this case it's in JSON format. JSON format is JavaScript object notation, which is commonly used for REST services. As you can see, it is easy, understandable, and structured in this way. It's making a lot of sense for people actually reading this piece of information. But you also have external APIs. In this case, I'm taking the API from Flickr.com, where I can search for particular photos or get some information about the photo. Of course, there are many more endpoints provided by Flickr. Have a look at this URL. On the right hand side you will see that Flickr API provides XML as a response, which means that it becomes a little bit more difficult to read it as a human, but it's still structured and you still can process it very easily with programming capabilities. So what is API management? API management is the control that you have over all the APIs that you want to provide to your customers or internally. So the purpose of an API management is to have control over incoming and outgoing responses. You do some filtering and validation, transformation, monitoring, alerting, provide access controls and all those things. What API management is not, it's not an API itself. You still need to have an API service behind it, or you need to have an external API being connected to it. If the API is broken or not functional, not working correctly, the API management cannot fix it. It can provide a little bit of assistance with rewrite capabilities, but it cannot fix something that is broken. Another misconception is that it does not prevent direct access to an API. If your API endpoint is unsecured in the public space, having it connected with the API manager does not automatically hide it for the rest of the world. It's still accessible over the public internet unless you provide additional steps to put it in a secured virtual network and all those things. An API manager will not clean your dishes, but you could build an API behind it that could, just to make that little distinction. I'm also focusing on Azure API Management as I experience it as being a fully rich and fully capable management solution for APIs with all the bells and whistles that are required in day-to-day operations with APIs. What are some common challenges that I come across? Well, first of all, I get a lot of requests about internal and external API management. Well, API Manager provides this solution out of the box, and let's have a look at, for instance, the procurement service. You have internal APIs with suppliers, products, services, orders, but also external APIs being the European VAT Information Exchange or the Belgian UBO register, or maybe even LinkedIn. From a high point perspective, you will need to have the access control for users, for partners and other enterprises, maybe even your staff, or it could be IoT devices. They connect to your endpoint, and from there it will connect to it the API Management Service. You can provide access control and permissions in Azure AD. You can have monitoring with Azure Insights, and you have a Redis cache for caching responses for many requested endpoints. You also see that I also made a separation between internal and external routes that define the APIs behind it. So the external APIs, again, these could be SOAP services, this could be REST services, it could be something completely provided as a service on its own, for instance LinkedIn. For internal APIs, we have our order systems, we have our products and services, and we also have our suppliers in there. In Azure API Manager, the configuration is very simple. For internal APIs, I provide an endpoint called int-API, which reflects the internal API. And for the external API, I provide partner-API. And at this point, I'm ready to go. I call my request for a response, just to see if the system is up and running. And the base URL is exactly the same one as the external one. The only difference is the route that I've provided. So int-API calls my internal API, and partner API calls my partner. And as you can see, it just calls and responds very quickly. Another issue that people are facing is, hey, how can I prevent people from abusing my system? Well, it's part of a approach that you want to take into consideration when you want to secure your APIs. So the first solution would be that you implement an application firewall with denial of service mitigation to actually prevent your system to be hammered by bots that are doing all kinds of nasty stuff. But then you also want to have rate limitation for authenticated or unauthenticated users. For instance, to prevent your site scraping or collecting all kinds of information from your APIs. For API management in Azure, it's what we call an inbound policy. The policy itself is something that you just add in the API management, and you don't need to change any of the code that you have created. So I provide an inbound based policy. It's just one line. I limit by key, and the key in this case is the IP address. And I also have that rate limit in place for everything that's status code 200. And I also provide information to the user to let them know how many calls they can still make. In API management, it just looks like this, and yeah, it's just a single line that you add in a policy, and from that point on, your endpoint is protected. So with one line to save the day, I call and call and call and call, and all of a sudden I reached my limitation. I get a 429 too many request header back or response back, and at that point I can provide also additional information like rate limit is exceeded, try again in 50 seconds. So now that we have rate limited our APIs, we come to a next challenge. I have a so a customer says, "Oh, I have a SOAP to REST requirement. The backend is a SOAP API, but we want to provide REST for all the integrators. How can we do this?" Well, first of all, the requirement is it has to be REST service providing JSON. So SOAP is XML based, and SOAP is structured through a WSDL implementation. So we do have a bit of a challenge. From a high level perspective, it would be that the public internet will interact with a REST API providing JSON, and the backend service is just a SOAP service, and API management is in between. Well, fortunately, this is already being provided directly within API management. So I can create a new API and say, okay, it's a WSDL file. The moment I selected this, I can provide a WSDL URL or a file, and I can select, okay, convert this SOAP to a REST interface, and I provide with additional details for the naming, and I click on create, and automatically the API management creates the API endpoint based on the WSDL that I have provided, based on the details being provided through that WSDL, and it will create all the necessary policies that are required to make that transformation possible. And at this point I now have a REST endpoint for my SOAP services, and I can immediately start calling it. So if I want to check the VAT for a user, I can provide it with the country code and the VAT number, and I get a response back. Okay, here's the VAT number and here are the details. So with just a few clicks, I don't have to change anything in my SOAP service, and I can have my integrators consume the REST API immediately. Another question, and this is a very common question, is, hey, how can we provide B2B and B2C access control? Well, again, it's a very common scenario, and the challenge is not to change your existing APIs. So with the existing APIs being as they are, you provide a layer of authentication, authorization through the API management service, and that's it. Um, Also, if you use federation services with Azure AD, there is no management on your behalf for the users of your partner accounts. So a lot more benefits than meets the eye. How does it look? Well, for your customers, you can select any OAuth or Open ID Connect provider. Um, the more that you provide, the more people you can reach. For your staff and partners, you can integrate with Office 365 or with Google Workspaces, which works decently out of the box. Azure Active Directory provides access control on your APIs, and it also allows the B2C integration with the OAuth and Open Connect ID providers. In order to set it up, well, you need to go to your, in this case I go to my Google cloud platform. I have my API endpoint defined. I create my client ID and secrets, and from this point on I'm done. This is all I need to do on Google side, and now I move on to the API OAuth settings, where I can actually provide these details and a lot more through a nice interface. And once everything is filled out, even the credentials that I copied from the previous dashboard in here, my endpoint is secured. I now have the requirement to provide an authorization header, so in this case it's Google Auth, and once I fire it off, I still have the ability to access my internal secured API endpoints. So easy peasy on this, just configuration management, and that's it. And now I have full protection on my API endpoints. And if you're making or interested in making money with your services, you can add some consumption billing to your API endpoints. The consumption billing part will be that, okay, your API is a premium service and users should pay for their usage. Again, the challenge would be that we don't change existing APIs, and we also want to integrate with our existing payment provider, for instance, Stripe. From a high level point of view, well, the only thing that we need to create ourselves is a billing application, which in our case is also an API, which is managed by API management, that allows us to have users subscribe to the service, and from that point on we can have the API manager delegate the subscription to the billing API. So the billing API provides the subscription part, but it's also the billing API that will be sent all the usage metrics for the accounts created, and that will be eventually the bill that we send to Stripe, so Stripe can send an invoice to our customer. How does it look from my endpoint here? Well, of course, as I mentioned, I have my registration API, which is the billing API, the billing app that I will use to subscribe new users. And in Azure Management, I select this as a delegation partner. And then in Stripe, I will set up my billing details and copy these over. And once the subscription is complete, I subscribe for €1 per month, or €4.99 per month. And now that the subscription is complete, I can start using that endpoints, and my endpoints will keep track of my usage. Variations on this is that you provide a pay-as-you-go kind of payment plan, so people need to pay at the end of a specific period the usage that they have consumed, or you have a monthly subscription, yearly subscription kind of plan, which will automatically be integrated in Azure API Management. So let me recap here. When using APIs, internal, external, self-created or partner-created, or a SaaS, use an API management solution. It allows you to combine internal and external APIs, and most important, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, because API management provides a whole lot of solutions directly within the API management service. So in the end, you can focus on creating value for your customers and not maintaining the middleware for all these things. If you want to know more, here's some resources. A few books that I can highly recommend. The dotted lines will indicate these books are Amazon affiliation links. There's also 2 videos that I added. One interesting is on Azure Fridays for the developer portal, which I didn't mention here, but it's a developer portal that provides documentation and live execution within the portal on your API endpoints through the API Management Service. I also created a whole bunch of links for the subjects that I talked about, so you can start implementing it yourself. And there's also some playground APIs if you don't have an API at your disposal. And data.gov has all the government provided data for Belgium. You also have this for the whole of Europe. I'm using flickr.com as an interesting case study because it's an open API, you can directly use it. And of course, management.azure.com is a REST service that manages all the things in Azure. So if you want to play, there are plenty of options out there. Learn, explore, and build something great. Thank you very much. You can find the slides on the URL displayed here. If you have questions, the easiest way would be that you reach out to me on Twitter at DragonBE, or Facebook, it's also DragonBE. And you can find my LinkedIn profile on Michelangelo van Dam. I thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you.